Welcome and welcome back. This is Series 4, Episode 3. Today's episode, a bit different once again. Some fantastic feedback from the last time we did this. It's a podcast. I did it a few months back. Here it is for you today.
Welcome to The Forecast by Alex Ahom. Connecting with people, one story at a time. In this series, I'll be reviewing news the people in my network are talking about. As a business founder, D&I consultant, and community builder, I know great content inspires. I'm going to react to today's story, and then Jaz the AI will read it aloud to you. We have so much to cover, so please like, follow, share, and let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. This is The Forecast with Alex Ahom, and once again, we're ripping up the script. Jaz is off for the day, and I'm going to share with you a live recording, a podcast with one of my favorite people in the entire world from the co-working, co-living industry, Bernie Mitchell. So sit back and enjoy Series 4, Episode 3. Let's go.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Co-working Values Podcast, brought to you by the European Coworking Assembly. So today, I'm really excited. I've pulled Alex out of retirement, who's one of the original instigators of the rebirth of the Co-working Assembly. So, Alex, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Well, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me here. Out of retirement, I didn't know I'd officially retired, but hopefully I'm not known for being a retiree. But
you should have a line like "Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years."
I should. I'll work on that. I'll work on my rapping. I think famously had a co-working space for five years or so, physical space. Ran the community kind of a year or so before I opened the space. Started that from scratch. Moved to Germany from the UK and started that, and that grew into a community that found a home in my co-working space. And since then I do a bit of speaking, public speaking, consulting, really into just building communities, making sure they're inclusive, making sure people are happy and fulfilled at work, and getting busier. Always could be even more busier.
I saw a video the other day, which was don't get spooked that I track these things, but it was a promotional video for Co-working Europe, and the moment I met you was at Co-working Europe in Italy in 2015, and they just done something with a microphone and an interview with you at the lower end of the hall, and then you turned around and I heard your accent, and that was when I went, oh, it's another English guy at Co-working Europe.
Yeah,
and he went, oh, I am English, but I live in Hamburg, because I thought I'd found another kindred soul there. But, so that 2015 was like 100 years ago in co-working. So before we get on to we have a few articles, folks, that we're going to discuss here about going back to the office and things like that. But so the people say things like that very quickly. Oh, I opened a co-working space. But then moving to another city in another country is enough trauma and excitement, and then finding, I always get the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you needed to find somewhere to work. Like a lot of people, I think, start co-working spaces. You need to find somewhere to work, couldn't find it, and then ended up doing your own thing. Is that an accurate assumption?
So I moved to Germany after realizing, London is definitely my home. I love it, miss it, but it's also my comfort zone. And I'm ambitious. I always have been. My wife is also ambitious. She's kind of more corporate traditionally, and it just became clear to both of us that maybe we needed a move to experience something different and to kind of grow our skill set, all that kind of stuff. So we had a lot of conversations, and we decided as a family to move to Hamburg. Long story short, but when I got here, I couldn't transfer with Apple, which is where I was working before, and And so I started to kind of meet people in the freelance community. I started to meet people, entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, I said freelancers already. These kind of people, just to creative people as well, just to kind of see. I've always been interested in kind of the way people work and what they get out of it. I've always tried to get a lot emotionally and socially out of work. And I just met people who were drained from work and depressed and stressed and unhappy with their boss and happy with their life and really had no sense of purpose from their work. And that's, I just don't like to hear that. So I realized quickly that there weren't many people here trying to do anything about that. And yeah, I just very quickly realized that that's something I need to do. And yeah, you're right. I didn't have a job, so to speak, and it was difficult in Germany. I don't speak German, so finding a job here was near on impossible. Especially something that I could put my heart and soul into, which is again what I'm all about. So I started to build this following, this community, this group of people who had a common purpose and a common goal, and I fashioned that into a community, and that moved into, as I said, a co-working space.
That seems like such a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And then when was it you had to wind it down? Was it like 2019, 2020? I forget now.
Yeah, so the end of 2019. So that was just before the start of, well, not the start of Corona, but just when we were hearing reports of a strange flu in Asia, and that was when I was closing down. Yeah,
because this has obviously come up a lot last year, and when I worked in work hubs with Phil, so it wasn't even my business, and when he closed that because it had just, it wasn't economically viable to run it right next to Euston Station like it was, and but there's this like massive sense of what I would now call grief after speaking to people last year, because there's people both of us know and love who have had to close their spaces in 2020. So some of those people closed their spaces because it was like, oh, I've kind of wanted to do this for ages and now I can, and others had to fight to the death to try and keep it open, and for many different reasons. Quite unfortunately, quite often it's like a greedy landlord meant they had to just knock it on the head. But there's what was it? How long did it take you to get over that?
For me, as I said, the transition into the space was clear to me. I had to do it, and as you said before, and I've said before in public, and I've done a bit of public speaking about this kind of stuff. I've consulted to a few businesses of different kinds who want to start flexible workspaces, and it was clear to me and obvious to me that I had to do it, and it was difficult because I'm not an architect. I'm not classically trained in those kind of things, but I knew what I wanted to be a part of, and I knew what the community wanted to be a part of. I'm very active on social media, so I knew I asked a lot of people what they want from their work experience. So I built the place really for people with a common challenge. And I did it alone. I didn't have any investors. I didn't have any co-founders. I didn't have a golden egg or anything like that. And so it's a lot of hard work, a lot of sleepless nights. It put a stress on the family for sure. Put a stress on me, obviously. But I say all that to say that I tried everything, and I did everything for that chapter. So when you come to a point when you realize that a new chapter is coming, if you've done everything you can, then it also, there is a certain amount of peace. There was a certain amount of positivity, and so it wasn't, the closing down part was not as hard as one might think, because I tried everything. And I say that to my kids. I've got 3 kids. I say that to my kids. If you put everything into something, if you put 100% effort into something, if you fail, or if you learn, or if it doesn't work the way you want it to, you can hold your head up high, and because you know you've tried everything. And I think a lot of people know, especially in the European continent. I've traveled a lot. We've traveled a lot, speaking about these kind of stories. We've blogged and done these things before, and we're still, co-working, flexible work. It's still in its infancy in this way. So we were early pioneers. We were early actors. We are early actors. But in terms of the mental side of it, the closing down part wasn't that difficult for me. I was proud of what I've achieved and what I've learned, and all those people that I served and all those businesses that I helped. I'm happy with what I've learned and what I've done, and closing the doors doesn't change that.
I remember seeing you at Co-working Europe in Warsaw, and you looked a lot lighter, and there was an air of accomplishment about you as well, as we were just by the food trolley. You said so. I'm going to segue into this now, is because we've been knocking, like, I've been in co-working since the Innovation Warehouse opened in London in 2010. And even, I know, Milan, it was like 7 years ago now. That's a long time in co-working. And then you probably found this yourself, like last year, everyone suddenly started talking about remote work and co-working.
Yeah.
And a bit of me, possibly arrogantly, was like, I've been doing this for years. And I didn't realize how many people didn't know how to, work online, work from home, work from anywhere. And there's a sort of bit I'm going to drop you to comment on is like a lot of people said, Alberto, who's on here next week, from co-working, from WeShare in co-working Spain, said that the COVID has accelerated the future of work by a decade. And like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd agree with them, at least. As you said, we've been speaking about these things for a long time. I remember some household name companies, reaching out, asking me about working from home and working remotely and working in co-working spaces. And, I would give them a crash course and speak about it, give examples. But oftentimes, we're talking about 5 to 8 years ago, oftentimes in the end, they would say, yeah, this is something for the future. This is not right now, because how are we going to keep tabs on our staff? How are we going to motivate and engage people from arm's length? We've just spent millions of dollars or euros on office blocks. Do you really think we're just going to let people work from home from shoddy Wi-Fi? And what they were trying to say is they were afraid of change, and they didn't know how to deal with it. And what's happened, through COVID, for that part is that we've been thrust into change, and some people have been pushed unwillingly into this environment where they've had to work from home, or they've had to allow their staff to work from home. And all those people who said, yeah, I would, but it just never worked, they've been proven wrong. And they're now thinking, wow, what Bernie and Alex and Janine and Joanna and all these people were saying, they were right. It can work, and it does work. So it's not a silver bullet, and we'll talk about that. It's not perfect, but this is evidence that the workplace was ripe for a change. The old way, the old normal, wasn't working for many people, and this is just another possible solution. And we have to embrace that and learn from what we've learned in the last year or so, and keep on tweaking, keep on adapting.
So about all that future work stuff, there's the article about Spotify, which we'll put a link in the show notes, folks, but it lists a whole load of like Twitter, Salesforce, Facebook, blah, 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 blah. But Spotify says it's letting its employees work from anywhere while still paying San Francisco and New York salaries. So there's a lot of heavy hitter names in there. And then also this week, the guy from Cisco, Goldman some shiny bank. I can't remember.
That's it. Goldman Sachs. Yeah.
Goldman Sachs said everyone's got to come back to the office. And I don't know whether it's because they're a very traditional thing. And then there's some comments. I mean, lots of comments on LinkedIn about you should work from the office and people need to be where they are. And even there's a couple of friends of mine that head up big teams in companies, and they're good people. They're nice parents and everything like that. But they are like, if they can't see their employees, they are really upset in a really old-fashioned command and control kind of way.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there's Rowena, who we podcasted with earlier on in the year or earlier on last year, and she's done a lot of work about remote work. And one of the things that surprised me, this is back last summer, is like Slack is very. You think Slack is a really cool company, but it's not prepared to work remotely, even though it has arguably a remote work product. But Microsoft just absolutely killed it last year because they have always been a predominantly work from anywhere company, even though you think of them as this kind of, hello, like the ultimate in corporate.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Why is there this? Why one lot of people? Is it the age of the company? One lot of people are saying one thing and one lot of people saying another, or culture? What is it?
Yeah, culture is a big thing. There are some companies that the culture is a bit more flexible, a bit more open, transparent, curious, and those are the kind of characteristics you need in these uncertain times. Since COVID has come in, it's blown everyone into a spin. The Black Lives Matter has also had a big impact on the workplace as well, and individuals, and we're seeing how we're seeing now how companies are dealing with that. And like you said, there are some more traditional companies that just are not ready to step into the next chapter. And we mentioned before off air that that fear is a big part of it. Fear of the unknown, fear of how do I control my staff? How do I motivate and inspire my staff from afar? How can these people work in environments that we're not in efficiently? Sometimes you need to trust your people and you need to engage with them in a different way. So I don't know if it's the age of these companies. There are some traditional companies, or companies that have been around for ages that are doing a great job, like Microsoft, as you said. And then there are some newer ones, that are also unsure. So it's not necessarily about the age of the business. It's more about, as I said, the mindset and the culture, which can change.
So something I've got to jump on there. How did I'm asking on behalf of a friend? How did the Black Lives Matter affect how people work remotely, or how companies deal with that? What effect did that George Floyd murder have an effect on our work environment?
Yeah, so definitely. As a member of the air quotes Black community, these kind of things have been affecting us deeply for a long time. George Floyd is not the first person that's been murdered. Unfortunately, he's not the last. So these things have a bigger impact on us socially, and oftentimes I've had friends who are very sensitive to these things, and when these things happen, it's hard to go into work and be smiley and motivated and have the same output. And when that happened last summer, a lot of people started to feel very uneasy and uncomfortable and emotional about what was happening, what they realized has been happening. So it has an impact on us because we're people at the end of the day. We're not machines. We're not just kind of drones on a factory line. We have emotions and feelings. So what I'm saying is that was the catalyst for a lot of people to realize that they have their emotions and their feelings have a big impact on our productivity and the way we're working. Now, how does it work? How does it impact the way we work at home? The Black Lives Matter movement and these social elements. Well, also, this stuff doesn't impact all of us equally. There's it's not an equal playing field when it comes to these incidents. So yeah, there are certain communities that don't have the tools, don't have the resources to deal with these bumps in the road, these changes, and these tragedies. And I think companies are now starting to stand up and say, we recognize that, we see that. This group needs more support here. This group needs more investment here. We recognize you. We listen to you. We're going to empower you because we haven't been doing good enough. So the Black Lives Matter situation and more accurately, kind of the anti-racism movement, that is now a very important topic at work, just as kind of work from home, remote work is, because, yeah, as I said, some groups working from home have it better than other groups working from home. And it's not just black or white, there are other groups as well.
So what have the clients you've worked with in the last year around diversity and inclusion in companies, what are like the top 3 things they ask you? Is it like, do they go like, oh, how can we not be racist? Or like, what
I was going to say that. I was going to say that.
I'm not being racist, but
one company did literally say to me, can you teach us how not to be racist? And I laughed, and then kind of he laughed, and then I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he gave, it was a story where there was a bit of racism going on. Young team, it was a startup, and
only a little bit.
Only a little bit. Yeah, only a little bit. It was a young team. It was a team of a few friends from university, and they didn't realize that they had blind spots, they had prejudices, they didn't realize their biases, they didn't realize that at one point they were excluding and discriminating. And there was a situation at like a Christmas party or something, and it got out of hand, and from there they knew there was a problem. And actually, it was my activity on, I think it was LinkedIn and doing podcasts and stuff, that they kind of heard about me, and he just reached out and said, yeah, we want to stop being racist. But that was cool because he was very, he didn't pull any punches. He didn't mince his words. He called a spade a spade. Yeah. But people ask that. People say, well, we've heard a lot about unconscious bias. We've heard a lot about microaggressions. We don't know so much. We've been reading books about this for ages, but we're still not there yet. Can you help us? That kind of thing. That happens a lot.
So what's unconscious bias? Again, I'm asking for a friend,
Of course. Well, we all have biases. We all have thoughts that that are unconscious, that we don't necessarily control. And they're there, and I have a workshop on this, but they're there in some ways to protect us. But if we don't protect ourselves from that mechanism, we, like that CEO, can find ourselves discriminating too much. So really what we need to do is kind of check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. You see what I did there?
Yeah, Ice Cube.
But I mean, for example, I'll give you an example. In a hiring situation, and that's one thing that I think companies need to do much better. A lot of companies are talking about, okay, we don't want to be racist anymore. We realize we've only got one black guy in our building, or whatever. We need to do better. So what they'd say is we need to do better with hiring. Getting a diverse workforce. Coca-Cola, a company that we all know, they famously said, we want a workforce as diverse as our customers, so the customers that we sell to. And that's a good way to look at it, because, they sell to everyone, and they should also hire everyone. So in any case, the hiring process for some of these, for many companies, is not as equitable as it should be. I try to tell people who are hiring to make sure that they are checking their bias. So one bias would be, for example, you have an interview situation, the interviewer sits down and says, oh, I see you went to the same university as me, for example. Oh, you went to London University or Oxford. So did I. And then they talk about the fraternity that they were in, or the groups that they were in, and they realize that they were doing the same thing. They're into the same sports. They drink the same beer. They have the same hobbies. And from then on, it's a love fest. They love each other. They found each other. You're hired. That happens a lot. You meet people that have similar interests to you. you like the same music, and then you kind of that you tick that box, and then you start to tick many other boxes, and so the bias from one area can spill over to another. And what's happening a lot, that happens in the hiring system process. So people who aren't necessarily qualified are getting the jobs because they went to the same squash club as the hiring manager or whatever. So there's that. There's kind of confirmation bias. So you might be in a group and the majority of the group is saying, yes, that's a great idea. And you want to question it. You want to say no, but everyone else is saying yes. So you just go along with it. So there are those biases. So there are many kinds of biases and unconscious bias. And what I would encourage everyone to do is try to change those unconscious thoughts and beliefs into kind of conscious behaviors and conscious thinking. And slowly we can move away from making judgments. When we see people that don't look like us or act like us, we can steer ourselves away from that.
It is like something I thought I knew a lot about this, but in the last 3 years I've read a lot. Like ever since, you and me and a group of people have always been attending or helping run those inclusion and diversity site, like unconference sessions at whatever it's called, Coworking Europe. Sorry, and it's just it's interesting how that's evolved. And once I've been to a few of those, and then the conversation, and you were part of that, moved up a few gears. It is just scary how I thought I knew quite a lot 4 years ago, and the further I get into it and the more I read, I realize how much I don't know. And it's quite scary, like how much I've had to read to understand it to the level I do. And I still see there's like loads more to go. So, I probably spent like a large chunk of I actually remember like horrifically being in a class at university that I went to out of interest about institutional racism.
Yeah.
And this was in like the year 2000 or something. And there was it was mainly like black British people in there, and they were talking about, I won't go into the whole thing, but institutional racism. And I was like, and I remember saying, I just don't believe a person in a company could be that cruel. And they were like, well, they do, mate. You're like a white guy in London. You don't have this trouble. And I couldn't understand what they meant.
Yeah,
like no one's ever been horrible to me like that. And it sounds so immature saying it, and I'm really embarrassed that even happened. But, I had no idea. And think how many people walk wandering around who are really well-intentioned that just have no idea of the consequences of their words, let alone their actions. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think we have to have these conversations. They are uncomfortable. Lots of people don't like to have them, but it's important we have them because we then realize how other people feel, and empathy and is a very big component of all of this. There's a big gap and a distance between a lot of the groups, whether it be young and old, white and black, rich and poor, all these different groups. There's a big gap and an us versus them situation, and we have to eradicate that because we are all in this together, and we can't fix or solve racism. We can't eradicate it. Black people can't eradicate racism. It's something that we all have to do, and prejudice against gay people or people with disabilities. We all have to be part of that conversation. But as you said, reading alone, it's a start. A lot of people, again, reached out to me. Have you got any books I should read on how to not to be racist? And I've read Why I Don't Speak to White People About Racism, and
great book.
Yeah, and what should I read next? And it's a good question, but I've done a podcast recently on this. Where you can't force all of the pressure, all of the burden of change cannot be on the one or two black people that people know. You can't expect the black person in the office to lead the anti-racism push. People can reach out to me for a book list, and I'll give it if I have it to hand. But it's problematic when we do that, and yeah, it's great that you're reading all these books, but what really sinks in and helps change is when you have conversations with people who aren't like you, and they tell you their experiences, because it's just a bit more real than reading a fancy book. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read, but definitely have conversations and speak to people, and hear their real life stories.
I totally agree with that, because one of the we're doing the whole so I didn't invent it, but Ashley and Tasha driving the and Ivana and Joe are driving the co-working idea project, which is inclusion, equity. I always go blank.
We all do it at times.
Accessibility, and the other one, diversity. Sorry, really long, hard day here. But that was like and still is. It's very active. Lots of people got behind it in the lots of the prominent people in the co-working industry got behind it, and it's still going, and it's going to be every month. And then in London, I just felt like, we felt like we were just emailing people, telling them they should do something. And then Tash instigated, let's get some people on a call and go through this month's exercise. Yeah. And then not only did they get the exercise done, so it was one thing off the list, which was simply go and look at your social media and website. And there's a whole thing about founder bias. So if, whatever demographic you are, your website and your social media will probably be like you. So, mine's full of Seth Godin, Clay Shirky, and Moby, because they're bald men with glasses and slightly tubby. Yours is probably lots of photos of Idris Elba or something. So
it isn't, but I know what you mean. But yeah.
And people were one thing is we sent that email Monday just to see who would turn up, and 10 people showed up and went through the exercise together, and they're heavily invested in it. And it was a micro action. But my point is, I've gone off track here, sorry, is that people just started talking about what we're talking about now. And it's not often you get that chance to, have an open conversation about it. And I think going to a big event on race or inclusion is very intimidating. Very often there's all those authors like Akala and Athel Hirsch on the thing. And it's like going to a rock concert and having an experience rather than going and listen to the music and learning the words and, wondering. I remember I I've always loved Public Enemy. Yeah. Mainly I liked Public Enemy in the early 90s to piss my parents off. And then as I got older, I started listening to the lyrics, and, it's way more meaningful than, it's not even gangster rap in my opinion. It's social activism rap.
Yeah.
So we'll put a link in the show notes to the idea project, folks, and you can take part in that. It's a very small action you can take every month, ideally, with your co-working community. So it's for people who run co-working spaces and people in the co-working space. And every month, a different group lead a challenge from around the world. And we have we have the Coworking Assembly First Friday call. We'll put a link in the show notes to that on Friday, the 5th of March. And there'll be people from all around the co-working universe come into that, just to sort of see how we can dig a bit, like Alex says, turn it into an actionable thing you can do in your own life, rather than, reading another book and liking a post on Twitter, because that, it's nice you do that, but it doesn't really, change the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that accurate? Sorry.
No, I completely agree. And, diversity, they say diversity is a fact and inclusion is an act, and you have to do something. When it comes to the office, workspaces, wherever it may be, diversity is really about the number of people, different kinds of people you have, but including them is the most important thing. And that's the part that's a verb. You have to do something to include people. And definitely going to big events is intimidating, even for people who are totally dialed in and invested. You really have to speak to your friends and family about it, and your close colleagues and those kind of things, and listen to their experiences, and also to, as I said, to check these biases. I spoke to a team recently who were speaking about, well, it was a few months back now, but it was before the end of the year, and they were planning their Christmas party. And I didn't want to, I'm not preachy. I just asked the question that, I love Christmas like, the next person, and I grew up with that tradition. I just asked, I asked her, do you think that everyone has grown up with the tradition of Christmas? And if you have a Christmas party and you call it a Christmas party, do you think everyone in the office would appreciate that and feel welcomed? And that was all I asked, really. I wanted to kind of plant the seed. And we had a great conversation. And in the end, she realized that they had done a push recently to hire more people from different communities. And there were a number of Muslim people that had joined, and a couple of Jewish people as well, who didn't celebrate Christmas. Basically, they had been said that they didn't celebrate Christmas. It wasn't really a thing for them, but what was happening was they were inviting people who didn't celebrate Christmas, didn't want to be a part of those celebrations, and then when they would decline, they would kind of say, well, they don't really want to integrate. They don't want to get to know the team. What's wrong with them? They're against us. And I think if they just were a bit more understanding and conscious, these people wanted to integrate in their new job, but they don't celebrate Christmas, and they don't want a pork sandwich and a pint of beer. And if you ask someone, do you want a hot dog and a beer, and they say no, is it because they're arrogant and they don't want to mingle with you, or is it because it's against their belief system or religion? So we just have to be a bit mindful and ask each other these things.
I'm gonna put a link in the show notes to the Cobot event code of conduct, which I took part in, which highlighted that, because I know one of the things I really appreciated about that was the alcohol thing.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I was a very enthusiastic drinker, and then I just stopped drinking because I'm much less of a dickhead when I'm just drinking sparkling water than 15 cases of
WKD. Or hooch,
blackcurrant hooch.
Yeah.
Made into what's it, snake bite with blackcurrant hooch. But my wife's much more interested in me now. I can stand up at parties. But I just one thing always puts me off any party. It's not that I love going to the party and stuff like that, but it's like at a certain point in the evening, like everyone's drunk and they're like, "Oh, Alex, mate, I really respect you, man." And then it just
cringy.
I find it threatening, and I'm like a sturdy white man who worked in nightclubs and bars for a decade, and I just feel uncomfortable. So if you're for whatever reason why you're not drinking, or you don't drink, or you don't like alcohol, and you don't like sweaty software salesmen like leering at you, imagine what it is like for people. And I felt really great when we sent that around Coworking Europe and said, like, this is how it's going to be. And I know a load of like alpha male software salesmen probably went to the Hard Rock Cafe to do tequila shots and thought we were a bunch of idiots. But that's the kind of environment we want to make.
You win some and lose some.
We win some and lose some. Right, where can we find you online, Mr. Ahom?
Alex Ahom on LinkedIn. So that's AHOM, M for mother. To
the M to the.
Exactly. So Alex Ahom on LinkedIn. Where else? Twitter. Not so much.
I think LinkedIn's the best place to get.
LinkedIn's definitely the best place for me, I think.
Yeah.
These days.
And there's and we'll put a link to your Adidas blog in there too.
Yeah, I've done a few blogs for some cool companies over the years, and I'd love to do more with different kinds of companies who are committed to this stuff. So like I say, I really focus these days on the future of work. So the work from home, work from anywhere, flexible work, building a better workspace and work community side of things, and also the diversity inclusion stuff as well. So those are the two areas that I'm active in, and always looking to do a new project on that.
Ace. Ladies and gentlemen, go to coworkingassembly.eu and hang around for a little bit of time, and this nice little thing will pop up and say, join our email list. We email out every week the events that are going on around the European co-working community. We got the co-working symposium coming up. We got the first Friday call. Every month we'll be endorsing the idea project. There's co-work in Spain coming up. There's something in co-work in Germany. And also we have all the stuff we do in London, which is very, very London centric. But if you want to come along and, pick up a few tips, not from me, but like from people who know what they're doing, you're very welcome there. Have fun, stay safe, and be careful. It is a jungle out there. Say goodbye, Alex.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This has been Alex Ahom on the Forecast. I've been speaking about community, co-living, co-working, diversity, inclusion, so many fantastic things. Reach out to me if you want to discuss any of these things, or just give me some feedback on the podcast. Thanks again, and I will see you soon on the next episode of the Forecast.